Just
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Wim Lou. You're listening to the Hello and Welcome podcast presented by Betway. Today, Alex Wong is taking a day off, which means we could talk real hoops. And no better person to talk real Raptors hoops with than Samson Folk at Raps Republic. Samson, man, you've been putting in work on the podcast side, man. I feel like you have been potting, my friend. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
doing good. Glad to be back on. For anyone who was wondering about my hiatus from the Hello and Welcome podcast, Alex was jealous of mine and Will's ascending friendship, and so he stepped in.
I think once we started talking dim sum items, he felt personally attacked. You know, I think it's one thing for us to talk about the nuances of players' games, which, you know, he's less interested in. But once we crossed into those Asian topics, I think he might have had a point. But Alex, I hope you're enjoying a nice Wednesday off here in Toronto. He's probably vintage shopping. Samson, what we're going to do here today is we're going to give a report card to every single player on the Toronto Raptors, you know, of relevance. I'm sorry, I did cut off the line at 12 players of relevance with this team and this past season. It's a good way for us to sort of evaluate their offense and their defense. But I mean, aside from covering the Raps, you also do a lot of coverage of the Indiana Pacers. And I don't know. I mean, did you get a chance to talk about what happened last night? Because that was one of the craziest games I can remember, basically. Like, that was nuts.
That podcast happens in like 2 hours. Myself and Caitlin will get together and talk about it. But I mean, that series has been pretty crazy. And I covered them in the playoffs last year. They're a very strange team to cover. Mm-hmm. They're amorphous. They like assume whatever role is necessary. And even in a 119-118 win, like they're a very unique team and they're fun to cover. And I mean, Caitlin, I think, is the best basketball writer in the world. So I learn stuff from her all the time. So yeah, it's been good. It's been fun.
Yeah, that was a great game by Gary Trent Jr. And then he makes the biggest error at the end there. But I don't know. I just feel bad for the Bucks in general. Like, I guess you make all these moves to get Dame. I remember the start of last season, like, the discussion was, who's the best team in the East? Is it going to be Milwaukee? Is it going to be Boston? I mean, both times Dame injures his Achilles in the first round against Indiana. Both times he got eliminated in the first round against Indiana. And I don't know. This would be a horrible way. Like, if I were a Bucks fan, I just know that I would be in mourning in more ways than one. It would feel tremendously unfair.
Yeah, you want to lose on merit. Like, you want to, if you lose, you want it to be earned a little bit. But yeah, and also just the cloudiness of what's happening in the future. Like, I understand Shams tweeted like Giannis and the Bucks will have a meeting. I think that's just exit interviews, by the way. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say
every player will do that. But you look at next season even, and the fact that Giannis, I mean, it's 3 or 4 more years that he might be like top level. And you want to have him on a good team and you want to be competing for a championship and all that kind of stuff. And Damian, just like the human aspect, he's been through the ringer, man. Health-wise, it's terrible.
He's been through a divorce. He's been through the health issues. It's just a lot, man. He was traded from like the team that he was at for over a decade. That team did not respect his wishes and sending him to Miami. I've made the joke here many times, but you know, a divorced man would like to go to Miami, at least just for the experience, not even for the experience of playing with Tyler Hero and Bam necessarily. But yeah, feel bad for Milwaukee, I really do. But that was a hell of a finish, and big shouts to Tyrese Halliburton, not only hitting the game winner, but also for once a player checking their dad for being like doing too much. You know, we're at an age of like LeVar Balls and like LeVar Ball clones. And at least with LeVar, he has incredible charisma. And get well soon to LeVar, man. He lost his foot, and you know, take care of your health and everything like that. But Tyrese Halliburton's dad stepping onto the court and yelling in Giannis's face, like, what are you doing, man? And I'm happy that Tyrese actually called him out and just said, like, you basically got to chill. Like, this is not what you're supposed to do. I mean, Giannis is an all-time great, man. Like, you can't disrespect him in this fashion. Okay, let's talk about the Raptors and their grades for the season. And so we're going to hand out the report cards. So I'm going to go in order of minutes played for the Toronto Raptors. And, of course, the player who played the most minutes for the Toronto Raptors this season is none other than Scottie Barnes. We're going to break it down like this. We're give him a grade for offense, a grade for defense, a grade for intangibles. And intangibles can kind of include whatever you really want. And we'll give it an overall grade based on offense, defense, and intangibles. And then we'll identify one area of improvement for each player. Let's start on the offensive end for Scottie Barnes. Samson, I'm sure this hasn't been discussed to death all season, but what did you make of Scottie's offense on the year?
I mean, a season of growth in some areas, attempts at growth in others, and perhaps more the latter than the former. A disappointing season. Anytime a guy, especially when the fan base seems like, we remember what everyone was saying about Scottie once they traded everyone away, and once the team was set and then he breaks his hand and it's like, okay, he's coming back next season. It's demon time or whatever the hell, right? And then this season he takes more shots, he scores less points, he has more of the ball, he has less assists, he turns the ball over at roughly the same rate, and his efficiency takes a huge dive. It turned out that the switch from the second best matchup on the other team to the first best matchup was meaningful. The shading that he saw as the number one option was meaningful, and that all those things made it tougher for him to score at the bucket and forced him into the mid-range. And so he was just doing things that weren't exactly in his bag constantly. And he talked about that, at exit interviews when I asked him, like, are you a different player than what you thought you'd be? And he said, yeah, and I'm still growing, and I don't really know what I'm going to be. But he's just taking it in stride. It was a bad offensive season, though. Like, I think the top 53 drivers and drives per game, he was 49th in field goal percentage on drives. That's, like, almost inexcusable. Of the high-volume scorers, he was really inefficient. He had a tough shot diet. He had a tough job. He didn't do it very well. But the other side of the court I thought was fantastic. And the seeds of growth have been planted. So, I don't know.
I think one of the issues with Scottie, I think that maybe inspires a lot of debate and I wouldn't even say frustration, because I really don't think there's any reason to be frustrated. But, like, it's hard to sort of evaluate him because on the season, it's difficult to discern what he had to do out of circumstance, what he had to do based on experimentation, and what he did because that's who he felt like his game should sort of sky towards. Like, I think that, there was a very memorable interaction when I talked to Darko, I think maybe in November. Scottie had come off a game where he shot like 2 of 11 from 3, and I was like, Darko, Scottie's been shooting a lot more threes recently. What do you make of this approach or whatever? And he was like, I actually want him to shoot more threes. Like, I wouldn't mind if he shot 10 plus threes. And I was like, well, I mean, obviously, like, he doesn't have the 3-point making ability to actually warrant that much usage, but that's a clear sign of, like, what they wanted to sort of experiment with him on the season. For a while, he was a mid-range guy. For a while, he was mostly a driver. Played a lot of point guard too, which, not anybody really had that much help on the Raptors, but I thought there were some really bad struggles. I think in that December period when he played point, where it was like, damn, like, is RJ better at this role? Which is kind of nuts to me because I don't really think of RJ as a point guard either. Having said that, though, like, the numbers are what they are. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I kind of ultimately ended up with like a C minus on like offense overall on the season. Is that too low for you? Is that too high? Is that just right? Where are you at with that?
I was thinking C minus, D plus, and that's just as far as like the season. That's the season. Now, if he did take steps in the mid range, and that will allow him to exhibit control, to draw fouls, that will allow him to play make from the middle in the future. It's just this season wasn't successful. I don't think a C minus or a D plus means that he's not still on pace to have an all NBA selection down the road and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't good. You can't slice this offensive pie in any way to make it good. It just wasn't.
The one thing he also did in addition to the mid-range, which he did shoot it at 48% from 10 to 16 feet. I will be curious to see how sort of like that extends. But It was a shot that he was comfortable. He looked for it a lot. The other things were not working. He did get to the line more. And I think that he picked up, I would argue, especially towards the end of the season, some dark arts for how to pick up fouls. He started doing the Pascal, like, yell as you drive with the ball in your hand high. And he did get a couple foul calls that way too. But I like the stubborn approach on offense. I thought he never really took any games off. And I think that's more... it was more reflective and definitely more effective on the defensive end. I would say he definitely led the team with intensity and effort. This is something that every teammate, every coach will tell you as well about Scottie this season, was that he was absolutely a leader on the defensive end. I would say he was incredibly disruptive. Obviously, he's always been a guy with high steals and blocks, but you could definitely sort of feel it, especially towards the end of the season. He was just hunting. And not only doing a good job on his own assignments, but also making sure to play great help defense, which is kind of sort of like been his MO as a player. This year, it feels like he had to guard bigger players a lot more than smaller players. This is just kind of like me eyeballing it, watching the season. But what did you make of Scottie's defense, and sort of like which areas did he particularly excel in defensively?
I thought the thing that he improved at the most was his perimeter defense, insofar as his deny defense, I thought, was actually quite impressive throughout the season. And what deny defense does is it can change the geometry of where the other team starts their plays, because teams are very particular about where they start their plays for spacing. And he can change where the catch is. And he can also move teams into the back end of the shot clock. And he brought it night in and night out. He was disruptive every play down the floor. Like, the intangibles there were incredible. And he also would play this very brash deny defense, but as soon as the catch came, he would kind of back off and let his length do the work. Whereas in the past on the perimeter, he would get himself into trouble jumping guys a little too much, and then they would clear his hips and get to drive. That was the biggest change for me, was that he actually became, I thought, a strong perimeter defender, where that hasn't been the case in the past. And the last season, I thought, took significant steps of being like a tremendous backline sweeper. And then combining those two things, like, I thought he was sublime defensively. If the Raptors were a good team this year, I think he'd be a shoe-in for a defensive accolade. All defense, he was really impressive. And it also, the diversity of success means that you can piece together different successful defensive lineups. Like Mogbo at the 5, it could probably work with Scottie, and it did this year, the defense, even though Mogbo in general, the team had trouble like rebounding. Stuff like that, it matters. And of course he works with Poeltl. It's just good. Great, actually. Great defense.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it's also the tone that he sets as a leader for the group, especially how hard he wanted to play defensively. Like, maybe there was a general lull for like the entire team in December. Masai did kind of just like, he was like, guys, everyone was sick. So I was like, okay, all right. I mean, I guess you can't really just come out and say it, but ultimately there was that stretch where the Raptors lost like 16 of 17 games, and I don't think that their energy was particularly high. But I mean, for everything else, I thought Scottie did a great job leading the line, especially with his effort, with his execution. You also saw him, I think there's a communication piece too. Like, you saw him like organizing, putting people in the right places defensively, holding guys accountable, and not in like a negative way. I would say, like, it wasn't like he was throwing his hands up at guys, you know what I mean, or like he would let his energy drop. And I think all those leadership aspects are like really, really important. I don't think that, like, I know the focus coming into the year, in like summer league and in training camp was like, Dark was like, we're going to play defense this year. And I'm like, all right, like, I don't know if this roster can really play defense. The roster played defense, and it was largely made to work because of Scottie's efforts. So I'm going to give him an A on the defensive end. Intangibles, I think for me, I'm going to give him an A, mostly because of how difficult the season was, between the tanking initiatives, between the trades, between the injuries, all that kind of stuff. The start of the season was really bad based on sort of how many injuries and absences were in the lineup. Obviously, that includes Scottie, who got elbowed in the face by Jokic and hurt his ankle for a bit. Obviously, his hand was messed up throughout the course of the year, but he kind of just played through all of that. And for the first year of him being the undisputed leader, I thought he set a really good mood around the team. I didn't really feel like guys were ever unhappy, at least in an outward way. And I do accredit a lot of that to his leadership. So I'm probably going to give him an intangibles, an A for the intangibles part. But for me, it's just also, I thought there were moments in his first 3 seasons where, because it wasn't his team, sometimes when the games got tough, he would sometimes like step away from the responsibility. He'd be like, all right, man, you know what, Fred, if you want to take over, then this shit is on you. Or Pascal, you want to take over, this shit is on you. But sometimes I would be like, why are you disengaged from the fight sometimes? I never saw that once this whole season. And I do give him a lot of credit for that.
He also, Masai and Darko both credited him as being kind of like the spiritual leader when things were toughest, and that he was able to maintain that, like, put on the hard hat, put a smile on your face, and go to work every day thing. And like, I remember this season, there were definitely offensive possessions where he disengaged and was like, ugh, and you could see him like quit the possession and walk back to half court. Like, that happened. However, I mean, it's fine. He's getting credit from the organization anyway. It was a really tough season. It is what it is. Oh, by the way, A+ on defense for myself as well.
A+. Okay, nice. Nice.
And yeah, intangibles, an A, sure. It's also like, this stuff, we get a little bit of hindsight. If next year they maintain like the vibes and make a leap to a playoff team and everything is still copacetic, then you can kind of look in the rear view mirror and be like, okay, Scottie really was doing something good here. So yeah, A.
Yeah. This was the foundations. If people weren't around for this season, I totally understand, because it was kind of depressing and a little bit boring at times. But at the same time, we might look back at it and say this is where we'll all begin. Improvement areas, I think this is pretty obvious for me. I think it's just like the catch and shoot threes. That's you can't not improve that. That is like a must for pretty much anybody who isn't strictly a center. And I think also too, maybe just the overall efficiency. I think that'll come from narrowing his role so that he doesn't have to wear 5 different hats. Like, he can just have a consistent look. This is his, this is him. And then you can build the rest of the outfit around this one hat. I don't know why I'm using this hat analogy. I never wear hats, but what do you see as an area of improvement for Scottie this year?
As a hat expert, let me explain this to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I did a podcast.
Do you build your outfits from like top down? Like,
no.
Oh, okay.
I also see Talha in chat wants to see my dome, but I sunburnt it. It's been that's why the hat is on me. It attracted a lot of the sun the other day. So, but as far as like this, I think actually the driving game is where I'd like to see Scottie improve the most. I think, like, although the shooting, he's almost 1,000 attempts, 993 for his career now at 30%. I know the stats say at 750 attempts things stabilize, but I believe in the catch and shoot shot going forward for Scottie. But driving, as you said, not being asked to do as much, being able to be used as a screener and a cutter and an offensive rebounder more often, the garbage man stuff that he's so good at because he's so physically dominant, that will kind of boost everything up. But I think like comfortability with his handle, his strength to get like that extra step, to use his shoulder to clear guys' hips and stuff like that, that is really important to me. But I mean, shooting, driving, it could go either way. And I'm sure they're probably in the organization, there's probably people for and against each thing as his primary development as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is what makes Scottie actually really interesting, is that we're just going to have endless debates over like what he should be doing, what position he should be doing. But I think overall, based on the season, I'd probably give him a B. We gave him like a C- on offense, an A+ on defense. I think that averages out to a B.
Yeah, I think when Trey and I did this, we did it early before the season ended because we're like, okay, we got to do draft stuff. I think we gave him a C+, but then we bumped it to a B- because he saved his school. Save a school, you get a bump.
You know what? That's true. That's part of the intangibles, baby. That's actually part of the intangibles. That was actually really awesome to see Scottie do. So we'll give him a B. RJ Barrett, offense, defense, intangibles. For me, offensively, I gave him a B+. It feels a little bit high, but I think this is one of those things where, like, your first impression and your last impression really stand out. Yeah. And like everything in the middle kind of just like washes away a little bit. The first impression I got of RJ's season was just like, damn, look at how heroic this is, man. Scottie's out, IQ's out. He's going to war with Grady Dick and Jakob Poeltl, and he's making it work. The numbers back it up. Through early December, RJ Barrett was averaging 24 points a game and 6 assists with respectable 46% from the field, 36% from three, 70% from the free throw line. I would say a lot of resting, the role, maybe a little bit like, I don't know, motivation maybe dropped a little bit, but like his form, I would say, he didn't finish as strong as he started. Also, obviously, there was a lot of like, tanking going on the rest of the way, but I don't know. I think overall, it's like I was pretty satisfied with RJ. My main concern was like, is he gonna be able to carry over the improvements that he showed last season as a Raptor into this season? The efficiency dropped a little bit, but overall, I'm happy. I'm like pretty confident with what RJ can do offensively. Clearly, a guy who can get to the rim, excels in transition, probably a secondary creator. Looks like they wanted to put him with the bench a lot because that's kind of how the rest patterns went down the stretch, but. I don't know. I was more than cool with what RJ did offensively. What did you make of RJ's offense?
It's a similar thing to Scottie in that he's being bumped up the totem pole one more column than he probably you'd want ideally, and he was doing really hard things. The most impressive thing to me was that he actually graded out on high volume as a very strong pick and roll ball handler this season, which is a big step, especially if in the future they want him as, a second side guy with the main guys, but also as like a bench offensive fulcrum, just running pick and roll to churn through possessions and get looks, I think is meaningful as a development. His catch and shoot 3-pointing was passable. He did it. The point you made about like first thing you see this season versus like how it ended, he definitely tailed off, and like where Scottie was not resting or sitting games. Scottie ended up playing 65, ended up leading minutes, but RJ sat games, and RJ was like, okay, we'll take it off. And then at exit interviews, he was like, I need a break from basketball. It's been a lot, because he just had nonstop stuff going on. Overall, I think like he obviously had the efficiency dip because he had a harder role, but he exhibited that he can do new things, and he actually did pretty well at them. And he struggled at things that he historically struggled at when he was a number one option. And I think next season, if he's, in a good role, we could see that efficiency bounce back up. I think he could lead bench lineups as like a transitional guy. So yeah, good. Happy with it.
Yeah, I think good is more than fair for what RJ did offensively. Defensively, a lot of talk, especially from RJ himself. RJ said multiple times on record that he's really proud of sort of the improvements he made defensively. I think there was a point of emphasis from Darko. I think Scottie brought it up as the leader of the team many times about how, RJ's defending better. Masai himself, he said in the exit interviews, he said he took the Dwayne Casey line of, you just told on yourself because you can play defense, RJ, which I think really speaks to how frank Masai can be, especially behind doors. He's just like, yeah, you weren't playing no D before, and now you did. So I think my question isn't necessarily how much better RJ got on defense, but just like how effective is RJ on defense? Because I would still say I'm going to give him a C on the defensive end. For me, the good things were the effort and activity was there. Like he went from 1.6 deflections per game last year to 2.4 deflections this year, which is actually ranked second on the team behind Jakob. He tied with Mogbo. It was like just slightly ahead of Scottie. The issue with effort and activity though is just like I just don't feel like he's great at keeping the ball in front. Like it feels like in terms of guys who give up the most blow-bys, it still is RJ. And that is still fundamentally, especially as a perimeter defender, the most corrosive thing you can sort of do on defense. So where would you grade out RJ's improved defense?
Yeah, I think it like marginal improvement. I don't agree. I don't think. And of course, I'm a schlub on the internet, so it doesn't matter that much. But I don't agree with it being like this big cascading change. He survived in strong defensive units, and the Raptors' best defensive units included RJ, which is a good thing. That's a strong thing. But it's also something we saw in New York. He didn't tank good defensive lineups there either, which is meaningful. But he is still, I think, a tough player to fit in defensively because he does not have the typically attentiveness or size to like bang with big wings who kind of get on the offensive glass or want to run like pinch post or cut off of him. And he doesn't have the foot speed to hang with particularly bursty guards. So it's kind of like, depending on the game, he could have a really strong matchup and do quite well. But the big thing for him going forward, I think, is trying to be a bit more of a terror off ball and disrupting things, because you're never going to clear the foot speed stuff to be a strong on-ball defender. although effort goes a long way there. But I mean, he did well enough, especially on a team that wanted effort and stuff like that. He provided it, but there's still big holes in his defensive game, I think.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues with like matchup data. Like it's just I don't even know how they determine actually how they count the matchups that you can access on NBA.com. But I do think if you look at the overall picture of like, okay, who did like RJ Barrett guard the most on the season, and you sort of listed by possessions, you can at least get a sense of like where he was used largely on the defensive end. And like the guys who guarded the most this season: OG Anunoby, Taurean Prince, Tobias Harris, Dyson Daniels, Haywood Highsmith, Ayo Dosunmu, DeMar DeRozan, Bilal Coulibaly, Franz Wagner, Benedict Mathurin, Rui. It's like they're not really primary guys. There's like, DeMar is a primary guy. Franz is kind of a secondary guy. I actually thought he did okay on Franz. Maybe those 2 games in Orlando really stood out. But yeah, overall, it's like pretty clear. Like you're stashing him on the 4th or 5th option. And like you mentioned, the more disruptive you can be in that role, the better. It's almost like Gary-esque in a way. Although Gary's more of a gambler. RJ should not gamble. Let's be real. Like if he had recovery speed or great length, maybe gamble a little bit more, but he doesn't really have those. So I would still say he's kind of like I would give him a C. I'm trying to be a little generous.
The number 1 guys that he did defend, or number 2 guys, are kind of strength creators as well. And that is RJ for his size, kind of his outlier ability physically is that he's extremely strong. And he gets pinch post possessions on smaller guards on the offensive end, and he can kind of sit on a guy's hip and guard like post-up initiators like a guy like DeMar on the other end. And OG also with his bully drive is trying to bash and smash. So, yeah, C is fine.
Yeah. Intangibles, I don't really know. I mean, I feel like he was a pretty positive, pretty confident guy. Certainly, I'm going to give him extra points for loving Toronto every single time. Like, he always shouts out, like, Jose Calderon. He's going on a hug Herbie Kuhn. His dad's always around. His family's always around post-game. It's, I don't know. I really don't know how to judge intangibles, honestly. I would say he was also a good soldier in the tank. Had to sort of carry a lot of bench units, which, in terms of the rest patterns, he definitely got the harder portions of the rest patterns. But ultimately, I don't know. I give him a B because I'm just like, this is kind of like...
Yeah, it's also like intangibles
nebulous.
And stuff like that is so informed by just what everyone's being told. Like, you need testimony from people all the time, kind of.
Yeah,
like,
you do.
Like, Scottie is getting testimony constantly. Jamal gets testimony constantly. Garrett Temple gets testimony constantly. But there was like 3 years where Scottie didn't get that much testimony. And this year he got a lot of testimony. And like, it's just... For something to be a topic like that, it just has to be talked about. Otherwise, we're trying to peer in and see something that is like imperceivable.
Yeah. I think areas of improvement. I think number 1 for me is just he got to get the free throws right again. I don't know how much that had to do with the exhaustion, but like he's leaving at least a point a game on the table with the free throws, and that's a lot. That's a lot over the course of a season. Like, you're just, for a guy who gets the free throw line a lot, this is clearly his best talent. He just needs to get that back to around at least 70%. I think that should be the goal. Like, if you're shooting free throws worse percentage wise than Jakob Poeltl, who shoots it one-handed, there's a real issue there as a guard. And then I think for me it's just like, I'm not sure like if he can just outright improve keeping guys in front, but I would love to see more of that, whether that's like attention to detail, attention to the scouting report, just being more alert and prepared, because I think you can cut out a lot of those possessions where he's just caught like reacting rather than anticipating.
To the points of the free throws, if he made his free throws at the percentage that he did in New York, his true shooting percentage would have bumped a full percentage. If he ever got to 80%, which some NBA players do, I don't think RJ ever will, his true shooting percentage would have bumped 2 full percentage points. And a percentage point in true shooting percent is usually correlates to more win, more impact, more all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, just meeting like the baseline would be transformative for RJ because it's been so tough as a Raptor.
Right. Overall, I'm going to give him a B. I think for me, he did lead the team in scoring. He did have to carry a lot offensively early on in the season, and I commend his effort to improve on the defensive end. I just want the results to improve even more defensively. But I think B could be fair. Third most minutes played on the season. I was a little surprised when I saw this, but Ochai Agbaji actually played the third most minutes. It speaks to his health more than anything else. He was able to stay healthy, be available. He's a very interesting guy because I think before we even get into the grades, by far, in terms of guys who exceeded expectations, I think Ochai did the best because nobody expected anything from Ochai, even in Summer League. You know, it was like, wow, he's there as a third-year player. He's reinventing himself as an offensive player there. He didn't do well in Summer League, which I think was not a great sign. And so there wasn't a lot of expectation coming into the year, and yet he was a starter for the majority of this season. He finishes offensively with 50% from the field, 40% from three, 80%, I think, from the foul line as well. So, like, just a generally efficient guy. I think he was one of the few Raptors. Him and Jakob were, like, the two guys were above 60% in true shooting. What did you make of his offense? Because he kind of redefined expectations for himself offensively.
Yeah, I thought he's like 8th man of the year on a good team type thing. You know what I mean? Because his shot making profile is not diverse.
No.
He's always on the easiest spot of the floor. He's always doing the easiest thing. He runs out in transition. He gets transition layups. He gets cutting layups. And he hits open catch and shoot threes. So the role is easy, but he was a star in it. He banged catch and shoot threes. He made, like, we were sitting there in Montreal at the open practice, kind of like, damn, he's making a lot of layups, contact layups. And it happened after not happening the year before. It was like everything that could be good role player shot making, he just did it. And so offensively, he's like an A or an A plus to me because it's just like nobody thought Ochai was going to be a creator. Nobody thought he was going to be all this kind of stuff. He just assumed role and thrived in it, which is unbelievable. Like, hell yeah, dude. Great.
Okay, I agree with you relative to expectations on the season that he's an A on offense. I would say maybe in terms of, like, just relative to the position of a shooting guard, I would give him a B. And the reason for that is, as you mentioned, he does have the easiest role. Like, he got, in terms of the shots that he was assisted on, 80% of his twos this season were assisted, and then 96% of his threes were assisted. And I think for me, it's like, okay, absolutely, he improved and he found a role, and if this is his role going forward, no one's ever going to complain about Ochai. But also at the same time, I'm like, there is a bigger responsibility for guards to create for themselves, kind of at all, basically. And like, if this is sort of what he is going forward, then I don't see him as a starter level player on a winning team. That's why you mentioned he's kind of like 8th man of the year. So on that level, I would say I would challenge him, because if he actually had any more self-creation ability and he was able to do that relatively efficiently, I would happily bump him to an A. But I think for me, I will A in his role, but B maybe relative to what you would want from a guard overall. Like, for example, I feel like even like Jamal and Jacoby created more for themselves than Ochai did this season. Is that unfair?
Certainly they did. Yeah. Ochai, no frills. All killer, no filler. Just like he's not, he puts the ball on the floor and the eyes from the bench are like burning a hole in the back of his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if it's relative to himself, then like great. But if it is relative to a starting guard in the NBA, then I mean, there's guards like 6 or 7 every year that do what Ochai just did, that get put in the easy role and hit shots, and then that's good. What happens next year is really important for him. He needs to prove that he can do this on a winning team and all that kind of stuff. But relative to himself, great. But
no, relative to himself, I agree. This is an A plus, because last year he was, I mean, woof, that was
not good. He shot 24% from 3. He shot 1 of 22 from the short mid range. I couldn't believe what was happening. It's just
defensively, this is kind of Ochai's specialty. Like, again, if you look at matchup data, like his top matchup guys are like all pretty like primary and minimum secondary kind of creators. I would say he was our stopper, but I also wouldn't say he like necessarily stops people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Relative to the team, I would say he's probably like a B. I gave him a B because I felt like I was a little unfair on offense, so I gave him a B on defense. But I would love to see for a defensive stopper to like stop people more often.
Yeah, I think Ochai for me is probably like a C defensively. It's kind of like the inverse. Offensively, the role is easy.
Right.
It's like the easiest role, and he's really strong at it. And defensively, I thought he has one of the hardest roles because he's higher in the hierarchy of like you guard that guy, then IQ, then everybody except Jamal and Davion were basically on the perimeter. But I think Ochai is not a super strong defender, which hopefully that's better next year. Or maybe I could be wrong, of course, but I don't view him to be super strong. Although he does get tough assignments, and
he does.
When you're papering over like a Grady or papering over like IQ who want to not be doing that you get some credit for that. But I didn't think he was particularly strong.
Right. Also, I feel bad for Ochai. He had 2 game winners hit on him this season, by Tatum and then by Jaden Ivey as well.
Oh yeah, the base.
Yeah, both of those were on Ochai. I think. Yeah, he's such a weird player to evaluate, honestly. He definitely surprised us offensively, and then defensively, I remember one of the things with Masai, not this year's end of season press conference, but the year before. I don't think we asked him about Ochai that much, but I think he actually just said like, man, believe me, like Ochai can be one of those guys, like very, very special defensively. And I was like, oh, okay, like Masai really personally believes in Ochai. And then I guess on that level, I was like, I didn't see that level of disruption defensively. Intangibles, I didn't know how to guard him, or I didn't know how to grade him on this because I'm just like, he's kind of a bit of a wallflower. Like, yeah, he's good vibes. He kind of fades into the background, took whatever role the gave him, largely started the season, but then when he had to go to the bench, he did it without a peep, never was really upset. So
big smile, good smile.
Big smile, sure. We're gonna give him an extra grade for smiling. Do you have a level? Do you have an area of improvement for Ochai?
Yeah, on ball defense. I think I think that his screen navigation more than anything else. He's athletic. He can be like he's not super wiggly. He's a very like up, right, left, straight back, like that kind of defender. So maybe like getting better at the stab, step, and trail and screen navigation. I don't know. And like physicality a little bit. He looks physically imposing, but he doesn't have physical prowess defensively. So trying to introduce a bit more of that, like, be a little bit more of a bastard on the ball is an important quality. Sure. So maybe that.
I was hoping you would learn a little bit from Davion. Davion's one of those guys. Like if you mentioned like Ochai is like he's kind of like a D-pad, like on in terms of movement pattern. Like Davion's more of like a joystick. And I was hoping he would take more of that from Davion. But ultimately, like I think Ochai on the season, we give him a solid B. Would you give him an extension based out this year?
I guess it depends. Because it also depends what the team thinks of their upcoming guards.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of guys sitting there, but Ochai, I hate doing the money thing, but I don't know if the money's right. Sure, I think he's an NBA player, and you keep NBA players on your team.
If it's more than like 10 or 12 a year, is it like? Do you look elsewhere?
I'm probably I'm waiting it out and seeing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You have that option. The Raptors do have that option. He is extension eligible this summer. Okay, Jakob Poeltl. Honestly, offensively, I'm going to give him an A on offense. And it's not just the career high in scoring. It's not the career high in free throw percentage. This year developed an appreciation for the push shot in a way that I never had for the sport of basketball in general. But watching Jakob cook all season. So Jakob this season finished 5th in the NBA in field goal percentage. The only 4 players were higher than him in terms of converting shots from the field. That was Ivica Zubac, that was Rudy Gobert, Jalen Duren, and Jared Allen. The unique thing about Jakob is, unlike those other guys, Jakob doesn't dunk. Jakob shoots 63% from the field, and he doesn't dunk. 5% of his shots were dunks. Everything else, so 95% were layups, were floaters. Actually, 95% were layups and floaters because he doesn't shoot anything else. You compare that to Zubac. 20% of his shots are dunks. So he's still more of a skill player. I would say probably the biggest comparable to a guy like Jakob would be Zubac. Although Zubac posts up a little bit more than Jakob does. Gobert, 49% of his shots were dunks. Jalen Duren, 44% of his shots were dunks. Jared Allen, 27% of his shots were dunks. Again, 5% of Jakob's makes were dunks, which means he just has incredible touch with the floater, with the banker, he started doing like up and under moves this year, some like pivots. I mean, just wow. Jakob Poeltl, the center that you are. I'm gonna give you an A on the offensive end, man.
2 stats. The first one, Rudy Gobert is currently 1 of 10 on layups in the playoffs. 1 of 10. So not exactly, there's not a lot of touch there. And 2, speaking to Jakob's floater, the short roll, the Raptors were above average in one offensive play type this year. The roll man. Jakob Poeltl is the only guy who provides a shred of offensive competence to this team. As you said, like the slide step, like he manipulates his pickup point when he's the roller to get the jump. It's like, I asked him about it 2 years ago at Eggs and Interviews, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" But he has such great footwork on the roll. Offensively, not only is he the fulcrum at the elbow for all of their delay action, all of their handoff sets, everything, like all of their split cuts that they want to run. He's so important, and he sets great screens, and he hits shots, which this team needs. This team needs people who hit shots.
Oh yeah, the easy thing is just like, what's really impressive about Jakob is it doesn't even matter how bad of a point guard he's playing with, he's still gonna be good. Like
before Davion went, like there was this first start of the season, he and Davion Mitchell were the 6th best pick and roll partnership in the league.
That makes no sense. But I would say the thing with Jakob is, if you just imagine the restricted area as like an efficiency zone for most centers, it's like if you're in a restricted zone and you're taking a shot from there, that's good. Jakob's restricted area is like 15 feet. So, like, I honestly, I feel like you could go out there, run a pick and roll with Jakob, hit him a little bounce pass, and you could probably assist Jakob.
Just need a little pocket pass. Just
a little pocket. Any pocket pass, free throw line, and in, he's in. It's an A for me for Jakob, and it's an A for you. Defensively, I gave him a B. I would say he was the main organizer on defense, him and Scottie. He led the team in deflections. He contested by far the most shots. Those are things you would expect from a center. I think he actually was 5th in deflections for centers, which pretty good. Pretty good mark. I mean, guys above him are like Jokic and like Wemby, so that's all quite good. The only thing I gave him a little bit lower on was he doesn't feel like a rim to turn in the way that he was in San Antonio. Like if he's contesting a shot at the rim, it's not like he's like holding guys to like 10% lower than they would typically shoot when he contests at the rim. But I don't know. I mean, a B might be a little harsh. I might even give him a B plus.
A B I think is fine. And to your point is like there are guys who they derive a lot of their defensive impact from the shots that aren't taken, which every big man does to some degree, deters things. And Jakob does have that, but also just the ability to close out defensive possessions. Yes. I think Jakob, his effectiveness as like a weak side sweeper or the low man is fading, but he is still so competent at closing out possessions and showing size that the Raptors didn't have anybody else who could do that. It's a pretty large change. And he also, especially to start the season, he had to step up so high in the defense to support the Raptors' higher pickup points, which was something that the Raptors did less of as the season went on. And they asked him to stay lower, which was better for him. But at the start of the season, he had to cover a lot of ground, which was maybe not everything he wanted it to be. But yeah, B is perfectly fine, I think.
Yeah. Intangible, I would say I would give him an A on this. He's just very calm, cool, collected all the time, very poised on the court, literally never loses his composure. Zero maintenance off the court as well. Probably leads the league in most times he's worn official team issued gear. Like players usually like to show off some sort of designer. Jakob Poeltl is showing off Toronto Raptors basketball franchise as a sweater. He dresses like an assistant coach, and he has the approach to the game of an assistant coach. Improvement area, honestly, I'm not even kidding. I would love to see him shoot more corner threes. It's exciting. It adds something. You know, if I'm tuning into Sportsnet in March and the Raptors are playing the Hornets, I want to see Jakob Poeltl shoot a 3. Maybe against good teams, don't do it, but against bad teams, go ahead.
Yeah, the improvement for me is the playmaking, for sure.
Okay,
I think high-low passes are the most overrated form of, like, this guy is nice with it. Like, Jalen Duren does that.
Yeah.
And Jakob can make those reads, but his turnover percentage has been creeping up over the past couple of years, and there's a little bit more meat on the bone for his playmaking.
He kind of floats passes more than he zips passes. That's the number one thing I would love to see more of.
He's the floater, always the touch shot.
He's just always, it's his muscle memory. He's like, but this will be softer on the hands. But yeah, just whip a couple more passes in there, man. Overall, Jakob Poeltl's an A. honestly, there's no other way to grade Jakob. Grady Dick was the next most in minutes played, which I was a little surprised with, to be honest. But we obviously didn't see Grady for pretty much everything after All-Star break because he had the double combo of getting hit in the face while also tearing his hip or knee or I don't even know, man. He just got crushed.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, he just it was like a car crash. Like it was, he got hit by like two guys at the same time in that Orlando Magic game. Offensively, I'm going to give him a B+. I would say the start of the season was incredible. Through Christmas, Grady Dick was third on the team in scoring at 18 points per game. I remember one episode of the React Pod where the React Pod at the start of the season was, hey, Raptors lost, but we're going to bring in Samson to talk about Grady Dick and how great offensively he was. We like there were so many episodes, but we were even doing a redraft, and I think we comfortably had him like around like 7th. So I think that was already pretty good, maybe even higher. If I had to guess. He did drop to 11 points per game from Christmas onward to the rest of the season. A lot of that has to do with the changes in role. But I think for me, I think he hit a new career high like 5 different times this season. He was like the secondary option for the first month of the year, which is nuts. He actually did a pretty good job of it to the point where teams were putting him into the scouting report. And firmly, if you can get yourself in the scouting report, that is already a win for you for what you can do offensively. So I think I'm pretty happy with giving him a B+. What would you give Grady on the season offensively?
He's a little like the inverse of Ochai, where Grady had one of the most difficult jobs on the team. And even like before my synergy got revoked.
Oh, no.
But I think this season, Grady finished 43% on spot-up threes and 46 or 45% on unguarded threes. Like, the easy threes, he hit. But he finished around 34.5% on the year. It's just, he took a lot of difficult shots constantly. And that's what the Raptors needed him to do. His presence as a guy on the scouting report who bumps out the top line of the defense, creates more room for other players. But he was drafted as like the shooter in the class, maybe besides Hawkins. And the movement shooting was not as good this year as I would have expected. The finishing, I think, will still come around, but wasn't as good as people. It was just bad. And the touch shots, they have to start going down. And overall, he gives you a lot offensively. And you were talking about that shooting guard thing with Ochai, where it's like you want to provide stuff.
Yeah, create.
He definitely projects to fulfill that role. It's just has to become more competent, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. B- I think is perfectly fine, especially because it did fall off for sure.
It did fall off a pretty significant way. I also think with Grady, I loved seeing he just made better reads year over year in terms of like whether he's using 1 or 2 dribbles to get to his spot. I think where that really shows up the most is the mid range. Like movement wise, he was hitting crazy shots in the mid range. I was like, that has to be like a lot of touch, a lot of finesse, and I just wonder if he can extend that beyond the 3. Obviously, that's a difficult ask, but if he can, at least there is a basis to sort of say like he's taking these difficult shots, but it's not like he can't make them. Like I think he just needs to extend his range a little bit further. Defensively, I mean, I'll give him a D. He's a poor fit for what the Raptors want to do defensively on the perimeter.
Yeah, I remember Darko. He was like, I want Grady guarding every player between like 1 through 4 in this league. I was like, holy moly, dude. And it was disappointing because most second-year players, they go from struggling to improving throughout the second year. But Grady came in with that extra weight and actually had, if he had maintained his defense to start the year, I would have probably given it a C+. But he lost weight over the course of the year, and he lost a bit of that punch and ability to hang in with guys. And by the end of the year, it was just like every game was a D- or a D. And it was just continuously. He really got beat up, especially when they're saying, like, go pick him up 38 feet. He's like, oh, brother. So
he can't do that, though.
Defensively, probably like D or D+, something. It's as a big Grady Dick supporter over here, the defense there's a concern level for me at this point.
Yeah, for sure. If he doesn't become a starter in this league, it'll 100% because he can't handle starters on defense. Intangibles, I give him a B. One of the reasons this informed me is just we had like a little chat with Masai. It was at All-Star Weekend. Grady was the only All-Star representative for the Raptors. He was doing the post-game press conference, and after he was done, Masai was there like a proud uncle, like literally like just taking videos of Grady, and it was really cute. And Grady was in a incredible mood. I mean, obviously you're at All-Star weekend for the first time too. And we were just chatting with Masai a little bit about Grady, and he was like, look, the one thing we love about Grady is just how tough this guy is. Like, he's just not going to back down from any challenges. If you start slow, he'll fight through it. At the start of last season, you know, that was pretty bad. I mean, he was a rookie. Like, it is what it is. But, like, start of last season was tough. He got sent down to the G League. There was discussions. Like, Sam Decker was like, Raptors tried to change his shot. And then it was Grady's like, I never changed my shot. My mom taught me how to shoot. I'll never change that. It was like a whole discussion, you know? And, like, Masai was just like, I would never worry about this kid. Like, he's mentally really, really tough. So, on that front alone, I think that's good intangibles. I'm going to give him a B for that.
He's kind of like that, you know, that kid in like the Disney made for TV movie, like that Midwestern kid who was like, I can't give up. I was raised. He kind of does have that aura to him. Like, I'm a grinder. Yeah.
That's why you guys relate. Improvement wise, I think it's pretty clear. He got to find a role defensively. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll talk about Mogbo later, but Mogbo's got to find a role offensively. He got to find a role defensively because Grady, you can't be like erasing all the contributions you give offensively by giving up defensively. I think overall, I'll give him like a solid. I'm gonna change this to a C plus in real time. Actually, C plus for Grady Dick.
C plus, I think makes sense for me because you have to account for how tough the role is, but some things just he did not do at an NBA level, and that's you can't get around it. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna hit a stretch of 4 straight rookies here. First with Jamal Shead. Offense, I'll give him a B. It feels like he solved his issues as the year went on, which I really like, seeing progression from a player. Turnovers were big issues for him, just especially passing turnovers. He was like spraying it all over the place, which is not good for a point guard. I think he really turned that into more manageable. It went from like a big problem to like more manageable. And then 3-point shot, like he was not shooting well to start the year. It was concerns because that's what he didn't shoot well in 3 in college. But the 3-point percentage normalized, and he actually became a pretty good 3-point shooter by the season's end. He got in a good rhythm. And I think more than anything else, he learned how to use his burst to get paint touches pretty consistently for everybody. So overall, especially relative to expectations for a rookie point guard in the second round, I'll give him a B for the offensive end. I feel like, I mean, where do you see Jamal's future offensively?
I think his offense is what impressed me the most. And he has elite NBA quickness, which is, that wasn't guaranteed coming in, but it's really meaningful. He's still like a shot diet when it started out of just like push shots was not tenable. Yeah. But it became more layups got introduced. While he is not like a strong 3-point shooter, he was significantly better from the NBA line than he was from the college line. There was real development there. Things that have to get better got better, and things that had to be good were good. I would almost give his offensive side as a 45th overall pick, as an offensively limited player, maybe like an A- or a B+.
Okay, let's do it.
His future in the league can really take like a step as he started to diversify his 3-point shooting, which is a big ask. But if that like guys like Jose Alvarado, guys like Chris Dunn, guys like players like that, you have to shoot the 3. And if Jamal gets that, he can hang for a while because he can move with the ball. He impressed me offensively, way more than the other side of the court, which I know is the inverse of a lot of people.
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't even put him in that category with Jose and Chris Dunn, because I feel like Jamal already does more offensive than those guys.
Wow, more than Chris Dunn, I think, but not Jose. I wouldn't think.
Chris Dunn's just jumping around, man. Chris Dunn's like a guard version of Rondae.
Chris Dunn trick y'all, man.
He does. I mean, stop going 1 for 9 from wide open threes, man. Let's come on, dude. Like that's just unacceptable. Jose has some like pretty high assist games. There might be some similarities there, but I would say that Jamal, the quickness to get into the paint, touch it consistently, and then just kick it out. I think that alone gives him like the basis for being a good backup point guard on the offensive end. Defensively, he's not a stopper, but he is a pest. I think that's the best way to describe him. Brings a great intensity for the second unit, sets the tone for those guys. Maybe there's more to improve. I hope there is more to improve. I guess the impact metrics aren't that strong from defensively, But the eye test wise, I'm going to give him a B on the defensive end. Well, I'm curious to hear what you think of his defense.
Yeah, I think it's tough for small guards if you're not really, really strong on ball, because there is like the sight lines of passers, the amount of surface area you take up off ball, and all that kind of stuff. It is felt. Small guards have a really tough time hanging in defensively, and just like pinch post actions or something like that. We saw RJ Barrett annihilate Steph Curry, for example, on pinch post actions. Jamal, he was described as like a prodigious level defender coming in.
Right.
And for me, it's probably like a C, although I'm like eager to eat humble pie on this. Like if Jamal is like extremely strong next year on ball, I'll very gladly be like, I was wrong. But yeah, his on-ball defense, I thought, was like overzealous, didn't have enough contain, and like definitely was a pest. But just overall, the defense I did not find to be very strong. But he's a rookie, and he has the willingness and the quickness.
I do think for Jamal in particular, first time around the league, I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned, right? He, by nature, is like a bit of a gambler. In like sometimes he'll like heavily overplay, but you got to know where you can get away with that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there's certain guys you can do that with, there's certain guys you can't, and you really need the experience to go around the league first to sort of get that in. I mean, there's only so much film and everything that you can anticipate. So I'm gonna push back. I love Jamal. Give me a B- at worst defensively. I'm sorry. Intangibles A+. Just such a wonderful spirit. Always singing as well behind the scenes. Like this guy's just straight up always singing. He is beloved by all. Like he's a fan favorite. He is a favorite on the team. He was really willing to do all the rookie stuff, which I thought was really not a good sign of like you're a good rookie falling in line, but like that old school, like, you know what I mean? Like old heads would appreciate Jamal.
Yes.
And I don't know. Great interviews too. Like super honest, transparent. Great dude.
He's so likable. It makes me hang my head in shame that I like say like I don't like the defense right now. Like
how dare you?
Like I'll be like, yeah, I don't find Jamal to be very impactful defensively. Then I go talk to him. I'll be like, God damn it, man, this guy's so nice. And he had one of the best quotes because I asked him on exit interviews like, hey, you've won so much in your life. What was it like, taking that, that step and being on a losing team? He was like, I don't see it as losing now. He's like, I see it as like preparing to win. And I was like, oh, this guy's got it, man.
Wow, he's Darko on the court. That's unbelievable. we got Darko on the sideline and Darko on the court.
Yeah.
Improvement areas. Honestly, there's lots to improve. He's a rookie. I would say a bit of it is poise for me. I feel like it's because if you're going to be the leader, then your energy really does impact the rest of the team. And I do feel like sometimes, especially earlier on the season, he would show like when things were going his way, like he would get a little bit emotional and like he would sort of like hang his head a little bit, like a couple bad turnovers, he might get pulled or not the shots might not go in. He might not be as aggressive. Especially as the leader, and he's really at least asserted himself for that second unit. I'm just going to need a little bit more poise, especially at the point guard position. That also extends to actual tangible things like limiting turnovers and picking the right moments. And I suppose defensively too. Like sometimes like it's not just gamble, it's not just pressure. Sometimes it is contain. And finding the right balance between all that. But overall, Jamal Shead, you're getting an A. But a teacher's pet, and teacher's pets get A. He's bringing. If anybody was shining an apple and putting it on the table for the teacher, it's Jamal Shead. Jonathan Mogbo next. Offensively, I hate to do this to a rookie, man, but it's kind of a D. I just don't really have like a identifiable. This is what he does on a good level offensively yet. He does a lot, but nothing effectively yet.
This is one of the biggest. Also, I really liked Mogbo coming out of college, but the big problem is one that he wasn't getting enough punch at the rim to justify playing as a big,
right?
Which makes his role easy as a delay decision maker and a handoff hub. But he just wasn't. He couldn't provide punch that obviously Jakob Poeltl was able to provide with the soft touch. And when the ball hits his hands, it just sticks so much. It just craters the offense. And he was so impressive defensively, which we'll talk about. But until he figures out, because the NBA isn't about like papering over weaknesses. It's about operating from strengths. and he has none on offense. He didn't have the confidence on offense. So it meant that just like, where do you work from? What do you do? And he didn't have a lick of that in a rookie season, which is, it's tough. Like, he's at risk of that without, big improvement. He's at risk of that, like, making him not viable for a second contract. It was disappointing offensively.
I would say if you look in I would say he's a nice connected passer. Like, he doesn't not know what to do. Like, he makes a decent read. He's learning to shoot. I think that there was progress over the course of the year, but the progress was from 0 to like, he's honestly 20th percentile as a shooter.
27% or something like that. The free throws improved a lot.
Free throws, yeah. Like I even watching like warm ups and stuff like that. Like he's getting better on that end. Like he, whatever. I guess people don't want an off-season warm-up report or anything, but he started doing this thing where he kept putting his thumb really back on his left hand on the guide hand. He it was like pronounced. He would it would be almost like backwards. I guess that's like a point of emphasis. Maybe like the thumb was like impacting the shot or whatever. But there is a lot of inconsistency. Like the misses kind of look really bad sometimes. So offensively, yeah, like you got to find a role, and it doesn't have to be like an outstanding role. I'm not expecting him to be like like he handles well for a big as well, but you just got to find something. You got to take whatever mix that is. You got to find something. Defensively, already pretty good. I would say give him a B plus. Honestly, I would keep me talking to an A minus. Already incredibly disruptive. Probably him and Scottie for me are the two most disruptive guys in terms of like getting deflections, getting blocks, creating defensive events that really help you win possessions. The effort's there. He's switchable. He guarded mostly bigs this year based on the roster construct, but I think he also did better on wings. Did pretty good on guards too. So defensively already playable, which is hard to say for a lot of rookies.
I think he immediately stepped into being like one of the 15 best switch bigs in the NBA, which
Perfect.
is a really meaningful thing to be able to do. The problem and why he was so much better playing next to Scottie and Jakob was that when he would switch out, then there would be nobody on the defensive glass to close out possessions. But as far as like bumping players out repeatedly, keeping contain, and limiting dribble penetration, Jonathan Mogbo is like flex tape. Like you slap it on and it helps so very much. And like the backline sweeper stuff I didn't think was really impressive. He's not a huge rebounder either, but just like being able to stop the ball is really meaningful. So yeah, like B plus I think is pretty good. And that's a real NBA skill, like an elite NBA skill that he has. So yeah, good.
Intangibles, not really sure how to grade this, but I would say that all the conversations that we have with him, he's a really smart kid. This is a nod to the hot mic situation. Nobody should call.
Oh, Lord.
No, but he is a smart kid. Like he really is. That's the part that I'm flabbergasted by. I'm like, I don't understand how anyone could think otherwise.
I think that you could probably like go look up the tweets from his introductory press conference and just every reporter being like, damn, this guy is like cool and like energetic and also really like comes off as very, very telegenic and like he it surprised me a lot to hear. But again, I've had people have messaged about like trying to clarify what was being said. Obviously, like we were there. That conversation was on the other side of the room, so we're hearing it through murky. I don't know, but John seems great. People love him.
Yeah, exactly. Overall improvement, just find a role in offense, any role in offense, and we can go from there. Overall, I'll give him like a C plus on the season.
I'll go C or C minus. I think probably.
All right, we'll settle on a C.
Yeah.
Jakob Poeltl, certainly finished the season strong. Really, like he was the guy that I was most looking forward to watching on a night-to-night basis when the Raptors were tanking. So offensively, I'll give him a B plus. Maybe this is again because you remember the most from the start of the season and the end of the season. But the end of the season was strong for him. From January 31st onward, he was 11 points per game, 42% shooting from the field, 41% from three, 90% from the foul line. I like that he can already kind of create, like he can do a good job of like catching and shooting, playing within the role of the offense. But he can also extend an advantage by dribbling to a spot, maybe pump faking, using a head fake. The guy loves a little pump fake, a little head fake. Even his teammates also tease him about it. But it's a skill those other guys can learn, man, because he draws fouls. He hits that game winner. That alone gives me a half bump on the grade. And I like that his game isn't necessarily dependent on the three, which, he had a stretch where there was like probably 7 straight games he had double-digit scoring. And it wasn't always because he was hot from three. Like, he can also create inside the arc as well. So maybe this is also projecting a little bit forward, but I'm giving a B+ offensively. It's probably a little generous because he wasn't really a B+ over the course of the season, but the way he finished strong was really memorable.
This might be our biggest disagreement, I think. Probably like the Jacoby's offense thing. I'd probably go like C or C+. It was really important that the catch and shoot 3 came around, and you used this term when we were doing one of the podcasts early on in the season that I loved. You said he had an offensive imagination, which I think was a really apt way to describe the way he attacks closeouts and kind of meanders middle and stuff like that. That's so good. But as far as the like off his own dribble from a static, I thought there was like nothing. And ultimately I thought he struggled a lot on drives, but his mechanics are so pure. He clearly is going to be such a strong catch and shoot 3-point shooter. It's just, he looks to me, and again, he's so young. I could be a jackass immediately. We'll see. But like, he looks more of like in that limited guard who hits, like does a lot of the easy stuff offensively role, rather than like an expansive offensive creator role. However, with hindsight, I might look dumb. But yeah, I think like C or C+ offensively for me.
I agree with you. Like, some of it is like, how can I say this? I feel like we've been so starved for offensive creating guards. Like, we just don't have bag work guards.
No.
As an organization. Like, you really have to, like, we got a lot of Jose Calderones in our history, you know what I mean? Like, guys who run out good play in the right spots. Fred was the same way. It's like that kind of shit. Like, even Kyle, like, bag work, if you put together Kyle's 10 best highlights, it just would look worse than, like, I don't even know, someone clearly worse than him. Like, who would you
Raymond
say?
Felton might have a better like
oh my
bag
God.
than Kyle.
What are you doing,
Kyle's
man?
a Hall of Fame point guard. I'm saying, but it might like Raymond might have.
Oh my God. Raymond Felton did have a bag, but
yeah.
Okay, that's come on, man. Like, Kyle's, for example, way better than like Baron Davis was.
Yeah,
but Baron Davis will have like an incredible highlight reel, and Kyle will have like left to right crossover on Victor Oladipo and kick out to Landry Fields, and I'm like, all right,
dribble right, pick up, lean forward, pivot, hit the fader. Like, it's a great shot. It's just not super flashy.
Yeah, exactly. I think Jacoby having a little bit more of that off the dribble juice, I think, would be huge from a standstill position, like you mentioned, because I think they want to test him out as like a point guard towards the end of the season. I would be curious because a lot of that would require him creating his own advantage. I do think that, especially in the system that the Raptors want to play, where there is very little like standstill, create the advantage, that kind of suits Jacoby's play style. I think that, like, in terms of what you can get off a closeout, I would still, Grady's still a little bit better than him, especially because Grady's taller and he can take 2 hard dribbles, get to a spot and just elevate. You don't have to do as much when you're 6'8". Jacoby's 6'4", right? So, like, well, is Grady 6'8"? I feel like maybe I'm overselling it.
I think he's like probably like 6'6.5", maybe, or 6'7". But
he's like it's
the
neck.
Yeah. He
Grady's got like a crazy long neck that gives him anyway.
The second spectrum stats on like blow by percentage and stuff like that, Grady had unbelievable numbers. Now he didn't convert on as many drives as people would like, but teams freak out when he catches the ball. Teams don't freak out so much when Jacoby. But this is rookie versus second year.
Yeah.
Jacoby has the world ahead of him.
Okay.
Prove me wrong, make me look dumb. It'd be nice.
I like that the drawing fouls and stuff like that. Some of that is just like he's got a good poise. He doesn't really feel rushed to do anything. Grady does feel a little rushed sometimes. I don't know. We'll have Jacoby Grady debates for at least the next 2 years because they are in direct contention for the same minutes. Defensively, I would give him a B. I'd say he can play defensively in the style that the Raptors want to play. He pressures the ball really well, and I think over the course of the season he did a better job of that. So that's kind of what they want from their guards, and Jacoby can do that. He can extend his defense 30 feet out.
Yeah, either A or A- for me on his defense.
Okay, nice.
He was really bad with his screen navigation, which he talked about. He was like, my welcome to the NBA moment was the 77 skip play that the Pacers run where they throw it over the first staggered screen and then Tyrese chases, and he was like, I was getting killed on screens. He was really bad as a screen navigator, but his isolation defense was unbelievable. I think players only attempted 4 threes on him in isolation the whole year because he plays up so high, and he also doesn't allow drives. He's just sticky and strong at the point of attack, and that is going to be so important for this Raptors team going into the future. Like, Jacoby might be the answer to who guards elite guards in the future. And I saw the seeds of that really in this season. And I think he gives you a little extra on the defensive glass as well, too. He can really burst to close out a possession. So A- or A, I think, defensively for me.
You know, there's like a bit of you'll appreciate this because you're a big Pokemon guy.
Yeah,
the shooting guard position, we kind of have like a Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur situation going on.
Yes, we do. Let's go. Yes.
Yeah. So if I were to ask you, who is Charmander, who is offensively high ceiling, defensively the frailest, I would say Venusaur, probably the most disruptive, maybe the least strong, but still relatively well balanced. And then Squirtle's like good on offense, good on defense, but not excellent on either. Based on that comparison, who would you rank Jacoby, Ochai, and Grady as the original Cantonian starters?
Yeah. I think probably Ochai is Squirtle, Grady is the Charmander, Charizard line, and Jacoby is like Venusaur, Bulbasaur. That's probably where I would go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good though. Each of them have their own merits. You know what I mean? Like, depends on what kind of journey you want to go on.
I wrote about this year that like they all paper over each other's weaknesses. Like Jacoby being a guy who depends on the offense to create for him, playing next to Grady who disrupts the defense constantly and creates gaps for other players, and Jacoby being a guy who can take the most difficult matchup, which can protect Grady, and he can keep the ball in front so you don't have to double so Grady can stay home. Ochai also does things like there's a synergy there.
There's a synergy. They're in competitive Pokemon. They call it the Fire, Water, Grass core. They cover each other really well. You can switch in, take a couple hits, and no one wants to hear this, man. I'm just I'm a little Pokemon nerd. Anyway, Jacoby, buddy, you're getting a B. You get a B plus from me. It sounds like you're probably got a B from Samson. So I mean, it's basically a B plus. Like you had a good season, man.
Sure, yeah.
Jamison Battle. If we can keep this one real quick because we are running short on time. Offense B plus. His roles 3 and D. He shot 40.3%. From 3, that's the best on the team. 42% on wide open threes. I think if I had to pick one guy to convert a wide open 3 for me on the Raptors, I'd probably pick Jamison Battle. He's just very consistent. That little weird hitch actually makes it so that he's shooting the same shot every time, which I also enjoy. Defensively, I didn't really know how to grade Jamison. Like, I think early in the season he was bad, like he was fouling a lot, but end of the season he was maybe still not good, but I don't know. Is Jamison a good defender?
I don't view Jamison as a good defender. I think like all of the things that RJ struggles with, Jamison struggles with to a more significant degree. Although the point you make is like Jamison, to just keep it quick, is like he was not promised a roster spot.
Yes.
A lot of times guys in his position, shooters come into the league and just they're like, I didn't hit shots. I didn't get enough run. It'll come around. He didn't allow for that. He was like, no, I hit every shot. I hit every open 3. Give me money and let me play in the NBA. He really just no frills. I hit shots, and he did, and he never stopped. Impressive.
Yeah, that's for the intangibles. He earned himself 3 different contracts this year, from Exhibit 10 to 2-way to a standard contract. The last guy to do that for the Raptors. Well, actually, that's not true. There's been a couple guys this year, but this is the same path that Chris Boucher took. And very different players, though, I got to say. You can't actually find more different players than Jamison and Chris. But ultimately, actually did end up taking Chris's minutes, too. But improvement-wise, I'm just looking for maybe a little bit more diversity. You know what I mean? Like a little bit more off the bounce, a little bit more movement 3s, movement 2s. Basically just harder jump shots in general. Not expecting him to do too much else besides that. But I'm more than happy to have him as... Like, he could be fighting neck and neck with Ochai for 8th man of the year next season. You know.
Movement shooting. Bang on.
Just movement shooting. I think overall, I'll give him like a B. Happy for him. Immanuel Quickley, I wanted to speed through because IQ somehow played less minutes than all those other rookies, largely because of the fact that he had 3 different injuries in the first half of the season. He did manage to finish the season healthy, which is more than anything else. I'm happy for him. But I find IQ to be almost the hardest player to evaluate on both ends of the floor. So I would love to hear what grade you give him on the offense and the defensive end.
I mean, and it's not fair because he's injured. So I'll just say, it's not fair. He could have a big year next year, and I would love it. But, it's, I would say, like a C on both ends.
Mm.
And it's just the things he's so good at. Shooting. He's just not shooting enough. He's not getting to his jumper enough. He's not as like heavy in movement off ball. He floats too often above the break. It's like, you're such a good shooter. Go form up to the ball and hit a three. He also, when Lewis looked at all of his drives, he only had 4 assists where he touched the paint and created a layup for a teammate the whole season.
That's unbelievable.
Like, and that's like, I'm sure you know who, like the Korean sports doctor, Poehler. Like, I remember he sent me a map when the Raptors traded for Immanuel Quickley, of his passing map, and he just never passes middle. And it's true. He just doesn't create layups for himself or others, and that's a huge hole in his offensive game. And it's just like, we need to see these things improve. But he wasn't healthy, so he couldn't get in a rhythm, you know?
Okay.
It's just, yeah.
All right. It could be a bit of an incomplete. I can hear that out, too, because he only played 33 minutes. My issue is, if you look at if you just open, like, this is like one of the most rudimentary ways to evaluate a player, but if you just look at his like basketball reference page and you just look at his per game numbers, you might just scroll a little bit down, you look at his like per 36 numbers. Has he not kind of been the same guy for like 3-4 years now?
He's like, yeah.
This is what he does.
I've been lower on Quickley than consensus since the trade, so I don't want to be like sour grapes here. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff he needs to improve at to be like a lead guard in the NBA for sure.
Right. Luckily on a team like this, he doesn't necessarily have to be a lead guard in that same way, but especially looking ahead to the draft, this will definitely not preclude me from drafting another point guard. Like, I don't know, if Dylan Harper's there, if you want to take a swing on Fears, even Kasparis, like, you know, these guys, like, if you think that those are the right guys, don't let IQ stop you. Like, you put them in your system, hope IQ improves a little bit more, but defensively, I don't think he's as bad defensively as maybe, like, you know, his reputation suggests. I think people just look at him, he's like more slender, so they're like, oh, he's a weak defender. Say he rotates well. He like knows where to be. He's not a deterrent. He's not really switchable. Those are probably my biggest things, but you know, he's in the right spots. Like, I'll give him a C plus. So it wasn't like that high.
Yeah, he rubber banded like. He was seen as like this really slick off-ball guard in New York because you get the New York bump, and then he came to Toronto, and it obviously he was not strong, and then maybe it swung too far. But he's like a perfectly fine baseline defender. Yeah,
yeah, he's a little disciplined, so I feel like he's not gambling and creating more like steals and stuff like that. But I don't know. Do you really want a guy to gamble just to get more steals? Like, it's not. I mean, if Nick Nurse was the head coach, maybe he would average more steals. I'll say that much.
Even if you do, he'll tell you like your name is Gary Trent and you're not part of the core. Even if you gamble, dude.
Gary's like, what do you want me to do? I'm like third in the league in steals. They're like, who cares? Fred, come on now. Intangibles, I like IQ a lot. I actually like his personality. He's pretty bright. He's pretty open. He's pretty fair as well. Mentions God at every moment, which has been like I feel like this is a sports-wide trend. Because I was watching Liverpool, like, you know, beat Tottenham over the weekend to clinch the Premier League, and Cody Gakpo scored, and he like immediately took off his shirt and it said, "I belong to Jesus," and I'm like, oh wow, like this is.
We're definitely there's a wave.
There's definitely a wave, yes, of speaking out more, which is not like I'm not for or against it. I'm actually not religious, but I'm just noticing. Exactly. Yeah. IQ, I think overall C, but C with I don't know if he's healthy next year. I think there's a chance to turn this into like a B. Chris Boucher. Actually, you know what? We have an interview with Chris coming out on Friday. Nice. We were able to catch up with Chris yesterday. It was a bit of a short interview, guys. Please don't expect like a long, expansive conversation. Although I was certainly expecting a long, expansive conversation with Chris. We'll talk more about Chris, but I did obviously ask him the question of if he's going to come back next year or not. So you have to stay tuned on Friday for the answer. Haha, it's nice a tease. Plug. Last one, Garrett Temple. Look, let's take off offense, defense, okay? That's not what this game is about. Yeah. I just want to talk about Garrett Temple's intangibles.
Yeah, dude.
This guy might have the best intangibles per 36 in the entire league.
He gave money to the teachers' unions. He stood with them.
Yeah.
That was a hell of an introduction to a player. I've shared a few elevator rides with Garrett as well.
His kids are mad adorable.
Yeah. He's a good man.
Yes.
And we need good men in this world. So
and on the Raptors, he's an adult in the room. I loved how like he maybe played like 3 or 4 times in like the course of the season before the tanking started, and like one of them was one of the Raptors wins over the Pacers.
Big swing.
You know, I remember I was sitting with Pascal's agent, you know, because he just comes around a lot. You know, we talk a fair amount, and usually we're rooting for the same things. You know what I mean? Like, we're rooting for the Raptors. Pascal's on the Raptors. You know, we might say pass to Pascal a couple times, but like ultimately we're rooting for the Raptors. First time I had the experience that we're rooting for 2 different teams, and I just could not stop laughing in his face for how much Garrett Temple was owning the Indiana Pacers. Pacers started the season super weird. They were like 16 and 18 at one point or whatever, but like Garrett, that performance was memorable for the team too, because I think I've heard Jamal Shead bring it up like 3 or 4 different. He's like, man, Unk could really play, and I'm like, damn, he's in the league. But no, I think Garrett Temple, at least as far as veterans go, I think it's like it shouldn't be a must because it depends on what other roster moves the Raptors want to make in the offseason. If he gets squeezed out, fine, like I would understand. But if you have an open roster spot and it's between like taking a flyer on another Orlando Robinson or Garrett Temple, give me Garrett Temple, man.
Yeah, I think there's probably like the tension between the team is like, we'd love to have you back as a development coach, and Garrett's probably like, I'd like to come back as the 2.8 million minimum contract situation. Yeah, probably.
Well, there's no stopping the team from paying him $2.8 million to be an assistant. It would just make all the other assistants very jealous because I think the rest of the assistants might make $2.8 million total. So
yeah, you can circumvent the cap. It's just you're gonna have problems on staff. Yeah.
Ultimately, I want Garrett Temple as part of the organization. I think that it really does speak well to his ability that every single person, you will not hear one negative word about Garrett Temple, man. He is, I mean, I don't know, man. Just please stay on the Raptors organization. He wants to do one more year, Vince Carter style. He got one more in him, so hopefully that's the case. Those are your report cards, grades for this season. Samson, we appreciate your time. We know you got another pod to run to, so we're going to let you go, and me and Jerome will tackle the Tangerine questions. But Samson, buddy, we appreciate you. I hope, I don't know, what are you doing in the summertime besides getting...
I thought we're all getting dim sum together.
Getting sunburn. Oh, yeah.
The three of us.
The three of us,
The three of us getting dim sum.
Yeah, Alex is busy, yeah.
I got to let the dome heal from the fiery sun, and I'm going to cover the Pacers until they're no longer there. But yeah, lots of draft coverage, and then hopefully Summer League. Maybe we'll be a big old Summer League posse.
Ooh, that could be fun.
Summer League? I'm throwing down the gauntlet. Raptors, you better go out there and win the Summer League championship, buddy. I think we're sending like 8 of these guys that we talked about the Summer League. Well, not 8, but like at least 5.
Yeah. They should win something. Yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, that's about it for me. I'll leave you guys to it. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Random question, Samson, before you go, hat-wise. How are you on bucket hats? Are you a bucket hat person?
So I like bucket hats when I see them on other people, but there's kind of like a genre of white man wears bucket hats. I'm not that genre of white man.
What is that genre?
I never had braids. You know what I mean?
Like, like a Post Malone type.
Yeah. It's also interesting because generationally, like if you go back, a bucket hat wearer would just be someone who likes to fish a lot. I'm guessing.
Yeah,
sure. They're like, it's a very practical item.
Yeah, just
there's like the long fisher bucket.
Right.
Then there's like the short little bucket.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Is it like the short beanie that doesn't cover the ears that I wear all the time?
Exactly. Yeah. The photographer beanie.
Yes, photographer beanie.
Yeah.
All right,
buddy.
Take care. We'll see you.
All right,
and on that note, it is time for the Tangerine Fan Inbox. Tangerine is the official bank of the Toronto Raptors, foundational partner of WNBA Canada and NBA Canada. And, of course, they're not just fans of basketball. They're fans of basketball. They're fans of fans who will grade each member of the Toronto Raptors over some best friend dim sum. Fans of fans who work on a Jakob Poeltl push shot on their Tuesday pickup run. Ooh. If you're hearing this, there's no doubting your commitment. Fans like you are at the heart of what makes this game great. So while we wait for Brandon Ingram to be the offensive first option, Tangerine is turning the spotlight from the court to the stands, celebrating the way Raptors fans support their team, because this is how we fan. To learn more, visit tangerine.ca/basketball. I'm going to master that Jakob Poeltl push shot, by the way.
It's the only shot you don't have in your bag. You got the pull up three, you got the catch and shoot three, you got like you got honestly for a guy who's like taller and bigger than you, you somehow get under me and get to the basket a decent amount when we play once.
Low center of gravity, I think.
Yeah, like you know how to body bump. Like that's like a real skill that like you really need to master. So, but if you want to avoid those bumps, especially like the more you want to play, the older you get, like that floater, that thing is eternal, man. You can hit floaters on people when you're like 60.
I did a floater yesterday. That worked out. I got like that a little bit. I also feel really bad. Joel, who I don't think listens to the show, sorry for knocking you trying to get into the post.
No. Bully ball.
All right. Okay, so going through some of the comments here. In a grading system that involved intangibles, I'm going to shout out a friend of the show, Coco, for bringing up some astrology signs.
Oh.
I know this is a serious basketball podcast, but Scottie, being a Leo, would want to be the center of things and a leader and thrive in that. So how are you thinking, Will, Scottie as a Leo is affecting his ability or maybe improving his ability to be a leader of this team?
I don't know how this works, so I want to need more explanations from you or Coco on this.
Interestingly enough,
okay.
From from Caleb. Oh no, Coco also. Also to note, Jamal is also a Leo. Heart, pride, and leadership. So, do you think
the two leaders of the team are Leos? Wow. Okay, I like this.
Yeah. So that might be something in play. Also on top, Caleb has noted, as someone with a gentle Taurus father, I hope Garrett Temple's qualities as an elder are addressed. So Garrett Temple, a Taurus, I guess.
That makes perfect sense. Sometimes it is kind of funny how these things work out. So I'm looking at the AI, the Google Gemini overview. This is not my ad read actually for Acast, but I do endorse the Google Pixels, by the way. Thank you for sending us a Pixel. This was a great phone. Shouts to Google. I've been using it for a long time. Please send me more.
We're in a Tangerine segment, Will.
Also shouts to Tangerine. Stress-free banking. Leos are known for their confidence, natural leadership skills, generosity, and loyalty. They are passionate, creative, and enjoy being the center of attention. Leos are often described as bold, warm, and expressive, and they have a strong sense of self and charisma. That does sound a lot.
Feels like it tracks for both of them.
It does really work and track. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, yeah, you know what? That's good for them. I was gonna look at it the other way because we're Chinese and we did kick Samson out so we can be more Chinese on the show.
I thought we include Samson to be more Chinese. Apparently,
that's only to cut at Alex.
Yes.
By the way, enjoy your Wednesday off, Alex, and your Thursday and Friday off.
He's been texting me and checking in.
Oh, good.
We'll have some post-production calls. We might come up with something to do on Friday, but TBD.
Okay. The thing is, as people know, Chinese people also love horoscopes. It's just based on our birth year. So I'm going to look up Scottie Barnes' birth year. And
before you do that, let's just touch upon quickly Garrett Temple. Can you read a little bit about
sure.
Garrett Temple as a Taurus means?
As a Taurus. Okay, Taurus. Taurus individuals are known for their strong, grounded personalities, often exhibiting traits like patience, reliability, and a love for the finer things in life. They're also
Congo
known.
lines.
Oh man, the Congo. That's the ultimate intangible, man. Yeah. They also are known for their loyalty, practicality, and determination. That does sound a lot like Garrett. I have to say that man is. He's just a man, you know what I mean? Like I think there's like a lot of boys in the league because like the league is super young, and sometimes these guys are kind of trapped in like a little bit of a younger sort of flow and vibe. I feel like Garrett is like solidly. You could talk to Garrett Temple about anything, you know what I mean? He could, like when I think when Trudeau stepped down and Carney took over temporarily as prime minister and now officially as prime minister. Like he was trying to ask like me about like, is this good for Canada's politics? Like he was curious. Like he not like he was trying to express a political view. He was just like curious to know about like what's the future of Canada's government and sort of like what the movements are happening here in Canada. And I was like, you know what? I've never once talked Canadian politics with a basketball player, like not once, because they're not curious about this kind of stuff. So yeah, shouts to Garrett Temple.
Something you should expect from the NBA PA VP.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, astrology sign or Chinese astrology signs.
Okay, this one. So Chinese astrology is just based on the year that you're born. So, for example, I'm born in 1992. So I'm year of the monkey. Jerome, what?
1984. I am a rat.
We got 2 rats and a monkey. We got
This is
100 podcasters versus 1 monkey. Anyway,
all right. So Scottie.
Scotty's 2001. 2001 is associated with the year of the snake. So it actually is currently the year of the snake for Scotty as well. So he's actually in his year. It's like a cycle of 12 years.
That's right.
Yeah, there we go. So the snake is the 6th generational animal in the Chinese zodiac, often associated with wisdom, elegance, and mystery. Those born in 2001 are metal snakes, whose traits include resilience, focus, and a sharp intellect. Metal snakes are natural planners and strategists known for their ability to think critically and act decisively. While they tend to be reserved, they exude confidence and charm, drawing people to their magnetic personalities. This actually really describes my dad, who is also a snake.
Okay. Yeah.
He was born in 65. So, this is not this 65 or 67. He might be 65. Yeah, he's 60 this year. Yeah, 65. But in any case, this describes more my dad than it does for Scotty, I would say. Some of these things.
Yeah.
For example, Scotty's just not reserved.
Yeah, the magnetic personality a bit, but I don't see the reservation side of it. He is also just very young. We'll see what he grows into, but yeah.
Oh, man. The alternate pod name.
I know, 2 rats and a monkey. That's,
We also got Monkey Boys from 92, we the brainy tricksters.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Wait, let me look up your zodiac, Chinese zodiac. Hold on.
Rat? Okay.
Chinese. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a rat and a Scorpio.
Ooh. Okay, 1984 Chinese zodiac. We are a wood rat. I don't know what the wood metal portion of this is. Honestly, maybe I'm not Chinese enough.
Right.
Okay, so wait, what are the traits for this? Personality traits. There we go. People with the Chinese zodiac rat born in 1984 are full of initiative, have great capabilities, and are gifted with eloquence. They like thinking, so they can often find out the key to solve the problems accurately. They have strong moral...
Jakob Poeltl push shot is the key to solving everything. Yeah.
That's what they say about he's a wood rat. They have strong moral responsibilities and advocate peace and hate the war. The wood rat are also able to handle everything in an orderly way, and their work attitude is meticulous, but they may be too subjective to accept criticism and guidance from others. If they can ask for advice modestly and make good use of their advantages, they'll be more successful in their careers. This actually describes Alex Wong to a T.
I was like, why are we suddenly sitting in an HR review?
Alex just got called out. Man.
No, I share some of that with Alex too. Okay, I think it's only fair at this point you read yours before we close the segment.
Yeah. Chinese 1982 Chinese zodiac. Okay. The Chinese year of the monkeys, the 9th year, the 12-year cycle, blah blah blah. Hold on. This doesn't have the wood fire situation going on. Hold on. Let me look at a different link. That was just the first link. This one. 1992 is the year of the monkey in accordance with Chinese zodiac. Belongs to the water element based on Chinese 5 elements. So the people born in 1992 have water, monkey, sign.
Okay.
Personality traits. People born in 1992 year of the monkey are smart, resourceful, lively, and active. At the same time, they like to show off in life and have strong leadership in doing things. They have quick reaction ability. Wow, that's literally the quick reaction podcast. Holy shit. And have often act accordingly to the situation. They're very curious and like to read all kinds of books. Their flexible minds make them full of creativity. However, the water monkeys are sometimes overly flamboyant, which tends to leave people the impression of being arrogant. Honestly, yeah. Thus causing dissatisfaction of others. So
that's
they
just
should
you
be
at the Sunday run this past week.
Yeah, buddy, I was cooking. I was wearing an Allen Iverson jersey. I was certainly flamboyant. So they should be more low key when needed and learn to improve interpersonal relationships.
Okay,
that's fun.
That's fun.
Nice.
The however is just so funny. Like when it gets to that part of it.
Oh yeah, they're like, hey, they're great.
However, All right. No.
Yeah.
Well, I like this deeper dive into intangibles through astrological science.
We might have to do this for the whole roster. Like not today because we're
Not
already
today.
an hour and a
Yeah,
half
yeah,
in. But
yeah.
you know,
But
let's
yeah,
put this
no,
on a rundown for next Monday, man.
Shout out Coco. Shout out Caleb for
Hey.
helping us out with it. Well, to close out this segment, I think we need to do a little bit of a spin. So I'm going to set that up for us right now. Here we go. Will, you let me know right now. What are you thinking the Raptors are going to land at?
Have we won the lottery here yet?
No, I think the highest we've gotten is 2. Wait, did we get Cooper at one point?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. The only time I think I've actually seen it was when Tankathon themselves did their first sim, and the Raptors won that one.
Sima, who's got a keys to
not
Cooper
bad.
Flag. We're moving down to 8th again.
We're moving down to 8th. Oh,
Yeah.
You got beaten down by the last couple of results, have you? Okay,
I'm just trying to overcorrect for the flamboyance.
I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna join in this one. You know what? Today's the day we get 1. Let's go for that. Here we go. 4.
Oh, 4.
Okay.
Nice.
We met each other exactly at the middle. That's amazing.
All right. Phoenix wins the first pick and sends it to Houston.
That's so
Yo, nothing would be more cruel for the Suns this
That
year.
is so bad.
Holy shit.
Oh shit. Okay, but you know what? This is actually one of our better
So funny, man.
in recent memories because Toronto jumps up to 4, Philadelphia drops to 8 and has to give it up
hell
to
yeah.
OKC.
Good,
so
good.
that's probably one of our best results that we've had.
Utah tanks worse than anybody and gets to pick 5th.
That's
Enjoy
crazy.
Casper's, man.
Oh my gosh. Also, as a mini check-in, because I think you and I have just been so devoted to like someone with an offensive bag. Are we in Camp Derek Queen now?
I think every time we watch Alperen Şengün, we're like,
Oh, yeah.
damn, it'd be cool to have a guy like this and pivot and post up and be tough and play through contact and just, like that, like really savvy offensive big. I feel like we
Yes.
haven't, this is another archetype we haven't had. Like we haven't had like a deep bag point guard
Yeah.
for the Raptors in a long time. I feel like we haven't had a high skill big in a long time. Now, of course, that's not to say Marc Gasol was not skilled. That's not to say Serge wasn't skilled.
Yeah.
But those guys, it's not like,
It's also the stage of career that they were at. Because like then you would
Exactly,
have said the same about
right.
Hakeem Olajuwon, who we had at a point, right?
right, exactly. Yeah.
I guess Chris Bosh, no?
I think Chris was probably that's the closest we had to that. But
Sure.
I mean, would anyone
even
say
then,
no
Chris
to Chris
Bosh-
Bosh for this team? I mean, Chris Bosh would be perfect for what the Raptors need right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think that settles that there. We have one more thing coming out this week, unless we start getting a little antsy and we want to do more things. But as Will mentioned, we did an interview yesterday with Chris Boucher at I think we could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah,
but
sure,
It was at
sure.
a really nice event. Chris was visiting a Make-A-Wish recipient, Henry, at Jack Astor's, and they were shooting some baskets together. They were doing a kind of cooking exercise along with a bunch of other kids. But we got to talk to Chris, who is also a finalist for the NBA Social Justice Award for 2025. And yeah, talk a little bit about just like all the efforts that he does in the community, all his charitable efforts, which he does plenty. He does such a lot. And from talking with him, and you'll hear in our quick interview with him, just how passionate he is about it.
Yeah, I think so. He was named as one of the 5 finalists for the NBA Social Justice Award. I believe the winner will get an additional, I think, 100,000 towards like a charitable cause of their choosing. Being one of 5 finalists already is really impressive. I think for people who may not be as aware, because I do feel like if there's one thing the media can do a lot better of is just like highlighting the work that these players do in their communities. I often find it's like almost always just Lindsey Dunn who's making the effort to go out there and like for example, we were there the day
At Ryerson or
Chris,
at TMU?
Yeah. Chris was awarding the Slim Dunk Foundation scholarship, which is one of the initiatives that his organization does, and it was great. And there were lots of people in the gym, and there were mostly TMU students. But like in terms of media, there was like Lindsay was there, and then
Savannah
honestly,
was there.
like Savannah was there, and then. Me, you, and Levan were kind of there just to watch hoops, and we're like,
That's right.
Chris is also handing out the award. That's great, but like, there should be a lot more attention to things like that, because like there are a lot of these athletes who are really trying to give back in their communities. And I think Chris, part of the reason why he was nominated is because he's just doing so many of these initiatives.
I do actually have the write-up here from NBA.com about it. So Chris Boucher is advancing economic and racial justice through youth empowerment, focusing on Black and Caribbean youth in Canada who face systemic barriers to education, mental health support, and economic opportunity. Through his Slim Duck Foundation, Boucher has led year-round initiatives reaching over 1,000 youth across Toronto and Montreal, including scholarships, mental health advocacy, and community programming. Having experienced homelessness themselves, he channels his lived experience into action. In 2024-25, Boucher hosted youth basketball camps in 3 cities, organized holiday meals and toy giveaways for at-risk youth and communities, led a Raptors Back clinic with Puma, and co-hosted Mindful, a mental health panel during Mental Health Week. He also awarded scholarships at the Toronto Metropolitan University, which we mentioned, donated 15-plus computer monitors and equipment to Hacker Gals, supporting girls in STEM, and raised funds through Night of Laughter, a comedy event featuring Black talent. That was happening, I believe, during preseason in Montreal. The Slim Dunk Foundation increased its visibility through Boucher's participation in Kids Help Phone's national feel-out campaign, which garnered over 1.5 million media impressions. Boucher has contributed over $10,000 in scholarships, tech donations, and community support, while securing impactful partnerships with Puma, Subway, Kids Help Phone, United Way Greater Toronto, Canadian Mental Health Association, 211, and the Montreal Community Cares Foundation.
Yeah, I mean that's all like really, really deserving of recognition. And I think that the reason we wanted to go talk to him was not just to like highlight the initiatives that he was working on. It didn't make the list, but he was there for the Make-A-Wish Foundation yesterday as well.
That's right.
And I think I just wanted to sort of get a sense of like how maybe even his background and sort of his very unique upbringing, and he didn't have a lot of people in Canada. Like he came here as an immigrant. He arrived at the age of 8. He moved straight to Montreal. Again, I'll let him describe it, but obviously it was a huge culture clash. And on that level, I think I already kind of identified with sort of that experience, because I came here when I was 7. I think it was roughly the same time. He's probably here in like 2001. I was probably here in like
it felt like you
2000.
two actually related on that level in terms of just like the first experiences upon coming to Canada.
Yeah, and like I think that obviously this is not something I've ever had to experience, but there was a period where I wouldn't say he was like homeless necessarily, but I would say maybe where kind of like housing insecure, in the sense that like his he had a just like a difficult situation at home, so he decided to leave. And then sometimes he'll stay with his dad, sometimes stay with his mom, sometimes he'll stay with his friend. On like really difficult nights, he would just like sit on the 380. It's like a bus line in Montreal that kind of goes across like the north of the city, like north of the mountain. It's a really long route. It's like, I guess if you took the Bloor line from like Kipling all the way to Kennedy and back, you know what I mean?
And that's like the Montreal north side, like that's a
kind of, yeah. Okay. It's more of the northern side, like it's above the mountain,
right?
But like he would just like ride the bus for 2 hours at a time, 4 hours at a time, just stay on the bus, just to like have a place to be. And that is something that I just don't know many NBA players who have a remotely similar path to the league the way Chris did. And I think when you go through moments like that, I think first off it really builds, well, it really requires you to have a certain sense of resilience to be able to make it through there. But I think there's like a natural sympathy that you end up developing for the moments where, if you do make it, and obviously Chris Boucher is like an incredible success story to like make it from those situations all the way to the very top. And he signed multiple contracts. He's probably going to make, I would say 50 million, maybe 50 million plus in his career. So luckily, if he manages everything right, which I think he has, like, the rest of his family, for this generation, for the next generations, will not have to endure similar conditions. But the fact that he's taking it a step further and extending his time to supporting these causes, like, I think it's a really great story. I think Chris's life story has been told quite a bit. Like, there's a documentary out there on Chris's life that Uninterrupted made, called Grind Now, Shine Later. There's other some YouTube documentaries as well. They all sort of document his history.
NBA Canada put out. I'm blanking on the name right now, but the one about just like all the different Canadian players, and especially focusing on them immigrating to Canada.
Okay.
Which like does speak a lot with Chris on it. And
Okay, I want to see that because
yeah,
I'm
really
actually
good.
really curious about that aspect. But in any case, this interview is not that expansive because, quite frankly, we did not have that much time to sort of get into topics.
It just
but
happens.
At the same time, like that was the motivation behind all of this, and of course, like it's cool to sort of build like a rapport with a player. I mean, I think I've probably interviewed Chris more than I've interviewed anybody else on the team that's played on the team. Like, I think I've interviewed Chris probably like the 6th time maybe I've interviewed him between like live shows, doing his pod. He did Raptors show. Interviewed him twice for the Raptors show. Interviewed him earlier this year in Philadelphia when he passed Vince Carter for most games played as a Raptor. I think in the top 12. And then now, of course, like we caught up with him yesterday. But it is cool to just build a rapport because we can then sort of skip past like the formalities and just go straight into sort of talking about some of the stuff that's sort of more about him personally. So I've always really enjoyed covering Chris. Again, I did obviously ask him about if he's going to plan to be here in the future. So tune in on Friday. We'll play you the interview then. But for now, I appreciate Samson, appreciate Jerome for coming through in the podcast. If you've enjoyed the show too, of course, leave your likes. Let us know your grades on the players. What would you give grades for some of the guys? Would you disagree with any of the grades that we made? Maybe we'll put together a little bit of a graphic so that we have something more to sort of like reflect upon. But ultimately, I think it was actually a pretty good year for a lot of Raptors, especially because of how young they were. So that's it. Thanks everyone for listening. Leave a like on your way out. And you've been listening to the Hello Welcome podcast presented by Betway. We'll catch you on Friday and next week.